Ah, hey everyone. Thanks for joining us. This part of the program is we're going to talk a little bit about Basecamp, which is Outlier Ventures Accelerator Program. I've got with me the main man himself, Jamie, and Anna, fresh from talking about gaming over on the other session with Chase and the guys. Now's just a good time for us to really just run through like what Basecamp is, because the applications are currently open. So good for any founders out there to ask any questions that they've got. We'll briefly run through like who Outlier are and kind of what we're investing in, a little bit about the program, and then touch on the selection piece around it, which is normally where we get the most questions. So as we go along, put your questions in the chat or the ask a question box in the bottom right of your screen. And once we get to the end of the short presentation, we'll kind of address those bits there and then. So without further ado, Jamie, I pass over to yourself.
Cool. So Scott is going to be my beautiful assistant, clicking away. So I will have to alert him to when I want to move to the next slide, which is now. Cool. So for those of you that aren't aware of Outlier Ventures, we've been around since 2013, picking outliers, of course, trying to find the hidden gems in blockchain. We've advised and invested in over 30 projects now, initially very much focused on this new data economy, some of which you've seen on the panels today around privacy, PrivTech, and how we can unlock the value of data. But increasingly, of course, DeFi and the metaverse. And we've helped projects raise over $150 million in seed capital. Over that time period, we first started incubating projects in 2014. They were primarily protocols, so we did a lot of very deep technical work further down the stack with projects like Fetch.ai. And since then, in 2019, we condensed a lot of our understanding about that stack into a very intense 3-month accelerator program, which many of the projects will probably attest to in the chat on the right hand of your screen. And this is because obviously the industry and the stack's maturing. We're seeing a lot more middleware teams and startups come through, as well as people taking this technology and now applying it to different industry verticals. So there's a bit more kind of classic acceleration that goes on there, but of course, with an understanding of innovations in things like tokens and an appreciation for the underlying stack and its limitations. And that accelerator is what we call Basecamp. And whenever we run a program now, it's been pretty popular. In fact, going virtual with COVID has been a success for us in that we've been able to reach a much wider, certainly from a geographic perspective, number of startups. So last time we had about 250 applicants apply, and I believe in this current cohort of 10 startups, there was about 12 different countries represented in those teams. And in the last 12 months, of course, several months of which you would class as crypto winter, we were still making investments. So we're not a fair weather accelerator. In fact, we made 21 investments, which made us one of the most active blockchain investors in Europe and possibly the world. And it's good to see that we're starting to be acknowledged for what we do over the last several years with awards at TechCrunch, Europa's, and City AM. Next slide, please, Scott. Thank you. So how do we do this? Well, of course, it's about people. And Outlier is unique in that it's a partnership model. So we're not a GPLP. We don't manage third-party money. It is a partnership of over 30 angel investors, technologists, entrepreneurs, and increasingly founders, successful founders that have come through from our portfolio that now want to support startups and increasingly invest themselves as angels. We have very kind of strong institutional pedigree, especially in financial services, which of course is increasingly relevant for DeFi, with a number of the partners having worked at large financial institutions like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, etc. But actually, we've got a 360 of skills. So it's kind of a combination of angel investing, and technology and entrepreneurship. And that kind of triangle has allowed us to then increasingly augment and lead in areas like token launch, token design engineering. We published the first paper, one of the first papers on token design called the 3Ds of token design, I think almost 2 years ago now. But most importantly, for projects going through the accelerator, we have a really good black book of investors that trust us, where we act as a signal. So we've got over 1,000 investors in our network on the West Coast, the East Coast, everything in between in the US, Europe, and Asia, both more traditional VCs, corporate VCs, and then, of course, Web3, crypto syndicates, dedicated crypto firms, and whales, as there's a bull market coming back. People seem to come out from underneath the rocks. Next slide, please, Scott. And hopefully our portfolio increasingly speaks for itself. So you'll hopefully recognize many in there. And of course, a large subset of those are within this data economy concept, things like Ocean, of course, Fetch, but also PrivTech like Brave. But increasingly, we're now moving to middleware, things like Biconomy, oracles like Data, and then application layer, looking at applied not just to DeFi, but beyond.
Awesome. Cheers, Jamie. Thanks for saying that off. Guys, I'm just going to dive into a little bit about what we actually, I guess, do during the program. I'd like to say it's rocket science, but it's kind of not. The idea of accelerator programs and why they've been so popular in general is that they're designed to like squidge a whole bunch of stuff into a short period of time and help you get where you were going to go a lot faster. Typically, what this involves is like working around your narrative and what you're doing, understanding like your business model or token model, depending upon how that fits together, building out a product roadmap, which allows you to either go out and raise finance or to become a large sustainable business on its own, but then also like plugging into the network, which Jamie touched on a little bit, and I think it's just good to kind of remember. The program kind of taps in to a lot of different things. I mentioned funding, and like generally most projects are interested in getting money at the end of it. That's normally the end goal, but also within Outlier Ventures, we know a lot of people and we understand the space very well. So as well as kind of providing with this money and this further route to money, we actually deployed quite a lot of our in-house team to be working directly with you guys day to day for the first 3 months of the program, but then also making sure that you're plugged fully into our ecosystem, ever expanding, I think I should probably mention. So as I mentioned up top, it's a 5-month program, which we split into 2 chunks. First up, 3 months, where we really put you through a bit of a boiler room experience. The idea here is to get everything done, and you can see it broken down here into kind of like, roughly first month storytelling, second month tends to be around like actually showing traction, whatever that means specific to your product, and then the third month is around fundraising and kind of taking it from there. If only life were that simple, but broadly that's what we do, and we kind of deliver this through a series of like structured programs, if you like, in terms of expert workshops. So we've had some really great speakers come in, whether it's around sort of DAOs and governance, whether it's around developer relations, sort of the standard investment fundraising pieces. What else have we had that's pretty good? I think that they're kind of like the main ones that stand out from this time round. Access to experienced founders. I think on Friday we've got Stanny from RV coming in to talk to the guys, and last week we had Roham from Dapper Labs. And the idea here is like exposure to good people helps you guys up your game, but also understanding like what they did and learning from them and getting some of the stuff that's not necessarily out in the private domain. I guess we've already talked about how we plug into the ecosystem, and also whether that's investors or protocols. But I think what's like real interesting is that we're real hands-on during those first 3 months. Like we have a dedicated team, which is like myself and Anna working day to day, and then 3 other people who work directly with the projects. And then we pull in like the great line of partners that we have as and when you need them. So I think if you technically wanted to, you could spend 12 or 15 hours a week doing office hours with all of the great people directly in the Outlier network, and then probably another 12 or 15 hours with the rest of our sort of broader mentor network that get engaged with the program. I'd advise against it, and you should focus on like actually working your business. How this actually works. So like accelerators, as I said up front, no magic. 3 things that really make a difference, which is the actual process of getting your head down and getting things done in a short space of time, and understanding what metrics you need to hit and what targets the right ones for you, which is probably one of the most underestimated pieces of the program at the beginning. But at the end, it's one of the most useful. The people who we can actually use as a shot in the arm, whether they're from extensive mental network, who are from protocols, financial institutions, and like consultant experts, and then our partners. And I think if you look at most recently, I guess, how Dear Data are kind of moving along, you can see that the partners extend past the program. It's not just, hey, you're here with us for 5 months. You can go and hang out with Binance for 3 months, and if it works, fine, sure. The partnerships actually persist past the end of the program. So that's pretty straight up. This is just illustrative of what a program like actually looks like. We tend to break it down into milestones from a productivity point of view. This is based on the last cohort, when we took into account at the beginning of the program what everybody was doing and how it would all fit together. As you can see, we're kind of on week 12. So it's meant to be an emotional demo day. It's actually demoed 2 days because we had so many teams and so many time zones to cover. And then the follow 2 weeks are really designed to like help teams succeed post the intense work. It's quite common in accelerator programs for all the hard, intense work to kind of not go to waste, but there's definitely a drop in productivity, which we'd want to avoid. It also allows us to work on bigger projects with you guys, such as obviously like figuring out your token model, getting yourself set up for a sale. That stuff, while in theory can be spun up quickly, to do properly tends to take a little bit more time. Yeah, cheers, Jamie. It is 2 weeks, 2 months. So this is just a recap of, this is our Basecamp 2 program. So this is the one that ran in spring. Just some kind of numbers there to give you an idea of what we ended up doing. So we had about 250 odd applications. We ended up picking 7 teams. Like the guys did a hell of a lot of pitching. I can't underestimate how much pitching there actually is, and like nailing your storytelling. The teams ended up with a whole wedge of revenue out the back of the program, and we worked with them on like quite a lot of investment and grants. So I know that all of the teams that have been through the program are pretty happy to have people reach out and get their experience. We're happy to put you directly in touch with them. But like, if you want to reach out because you think we're going to muddy the waters or something, like just go for it. There's nothing to hide here. And then Anna, if you'd like to tell people a little bit more about how they can actually get into the program.
Yep, absolutely. So for founders, we're looking at about 5 different things. So we've been as Jamie mentioned, we've been active since 2013. That's actually 7 years in experience in the market as investors. So we've met literally thousands of Web3 founders, and we have managed to synthesize it to founder mindset. That's basically being very scrappy, being hungry, and being basically a hustler and trying to get things done, regardless if you have the team or not. So some things will be impossible to do if you're a commercial founder and trying to build a tech. But for other things, like gaining access to customers and similar stuff like this, like it is possible to do this by yourself. Web3 Fit. This is basically being more crypto native, understanding the Web3 scene, understanding what the tech is all about, understanding the ethos, and also being able to speak to the community. Network growth and diffusion potential. This is where we actually are looking for founders that are coming in with a massive vision, and we help them stay focused and deliver on the way. But you need to be able to grow your network. You should be able to garner a community as well. Domain expertise, and then legal, regulatory, and compliance. These are more or less dependent on what you're doing. So you should always be following the legal, the regulatory, and the compliance. You should always have these in check. But these are very different for a DeFi project trying to revolutionize fundraisers with bonding curves and governance tokens, and it will be completely different for a project trying to build a marketplace. And then with the domain expertise, again, it's very dependent on what you're building, but it's always a good thing to have, especially in more difficult markets like insurtech, fintech, and energy, and all of these like industries deemed to be a little bit more boring. Scott, can we go next?
Sure.
And then on the selection criteria, here are some facts. This is how our process works. It is pretty straightforward. So we'll drop a link in the chat where you can actually apply. So we only review the applications that have been completed. Application process is running until end of October, but we are assessing startups based on these criteria on a rolling basis, and we're probably going to do offers on a rolling basis as well. The goal for the cohort is 10 teams. So as you can see, for the third base camp, we had about 270 applicants. And then for the first and the second one, we had another about 300. So we have already assessed about 600 teams, and we usually receive between 200 and 250 applications for a program. Out of these, about 30 to 40 go to the first investment meeting, which in between these, we do some quick screening. So that's Scott and myself looking for the teams, what could be a fit, what markets make sense, what products look like they're suitable, what founding teams look like. We tend to speak with a lot of teams at this stage. So we're evaluating about 30 to 40. We're presenting them to the first meeting where we have our partners, including Jamie, voting. And then we decide which ones to pass on to the next stage, where we do the founder screening meetings, the second investment meeting, and then we can actually go forward with an offer. So all in all, that takes a couple of weeks. It's pretty intense, and we'll be speaking with you a lot should you be chosen to do this. Scott, next. And then how to apply and how to be successful. As I mentioned, we're going to put a link in the chat. We are using F6S. Your draft will still be there, it will be marked as incomplete unless you complete your application. So please do that. And then how to be successful is actually not that difficult. We're looking for three main things. So the first thing we're looking at is actually the language. Please be as clear and as concise as possible. So we don't want you to be writing essays like in school, but also we do want to be able to learn what your business is all about from about 20 questions. So obviously we're not going to learn anything and everything about your business, but we will get a very good picture depending on how you write your application. Salesy and buzzworthy language doesn't quite work with us the same way like it could with other people like customers, just because we are breathing and leaving this space. So just be clear, just be concise, be honest, and it should be fine. Another thing is don't rush through the application, because rushing through the application is actually, we can see that people get tired halfway through. and the quality of the writing and the explanations actually dropped significantly in the second half. When you feel like this is happening, just stand up, take a break, go for a walk. Your F6S draft will still be there, and then you can you can refresh yourself and then have a clear head and just dive back in and complete your application. And then the final thing is just don't postpone until the very last second. A lot of people will be postponing until the very last second, and what happens is we're inundated with applications. We are working 15-hour days to complete these applications. We're reading through a lot of things. So as a founder, you really want us to read through your application with a clear mind, rather than having read through like 50 applications, you to be the 51st. So please don't leave it to the last second. We start the selection early, we start the offers early. So just submit when you're ready. And then the most important thing here is we want to get to know you as a person and how you think. We invest at such an early stage that we basically invest in teams. You won't have everything figured out, but the reasoning and the assumptions behind what you do are always the most important part. So even if you don't know what you're doing just yet about something we ask you, just list your assumptions, list your hypothesis, and we'll help you work through this. But it really helps us see how you're actually thinking. Yep, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. And what is different about the upcoming program, which we've not previously done before, and I think actually gives people an edge if they've been thinking about a startup but haven't quite made the jump yet, is we've got a couple of requests for proposal. So these are areas that we've identified as interesting. We know the technology's out there, and we're just waiting for great founders to come in and pick them up. Jamie is going to walk us through these guys.
Cool. So as Scott said, we've not done this before, but being so close to this kind of Web3 stack, there are fundamental problems that we think need to be solved. And in the absence of people approaching us with those solutions, we've done internal work to kind of develop concepts to then bring to this pool of entrepreneur. And so we have two RFPs. One is, I'll talk a little bit later, Zip, which is an internal project that we did through Outlier Labs. And the second one is the SSI Token Co, or what I cheekily named P. Diddy, Project Diddy, as in Decentralized Identifiers Initiative. And so to focus on the SSI token initially, you may or may not already know that we've been engaged with the Sovereign Foundation and Evanim for over 3 years. We incubated that project. They raised over $50 million to build out a token optimized instance of the Sovereign Network. The Sovereign Network allows for self-sovereign identity, but also zero knowledge proof verifiable claims. And that code base is also probably better known in the market as Hyperledger Indy. So it's the identity solution for Hyperledger, IBM's Hyperledger, the Linux Foundation. And for us, the identity project, solving for decentralized identity, is so important to Web3. Without it, you can't have a decentralized web. It's not possible. You'd just be reliant upon an entity, an identity custodian, in effect, or an identity issuer that would be a central party. And of course, there are several different attempts at forms of decentralized identity. They're usually tied to a public blockchain that is general purpose. And so Sovereign went about building a custom solution specifically for SSI and DIDs, decentralized identifiers. Because So all that tech got built. It got open sourced several months ago. But because the Sovereign Foundation itself is based in the US, and several of its stewards, which are effectively node operators in the untokenized instance of the network, are also large US companies, including Intel, Cisco, and several others. They were unable to launch the tokenized instance of the network and push it to mainnet. So rather than give up on that project, we and Evonim, who were the commercial party that donated that initial code base to Sovereign, have continued to try to find a pathway to launch that network, albeit outside of the US. But ultimately, good projects need founders, not bureaucrats. And so for us, this is still regarded as a seed stage project, even though the technology is built. It has several backers, has this relationship to Sovereign and their network and its stewards, although the commercials of that are in negotiation. And so we need a team, like we, the community that have backed this project, need a team to take that to market. And so we decided to work with Evonim to find founding teams and to put them through our acceleration program. It's the easiest way for us to help that project. So if you are a founder, be it an entrepreneur who is directly or adjacently related to DIDs and identity and self-sovereign identity, or CTO that has experience in that space, get in touch, apply through the normal form. It might look a bit weird because it's normally for a startup applying, but you can kind of use your imagination to think about how you might fill out that form. And then equally, I think there is an email address, which we will drop probably here, where you can kind of express your interest, send through a CV and everything else. So I don't know, Anna or Scott, if you could work on getting that in there whilst I go through these. And hopefully this is also testament to how committed we are to projects. So as I said, we've been working through all kinds of weather with this project for over 3 years. We're still here. And we're still very committed to making it a reality. And as I said, that's, of course, because we have commercial interest in it. But more than that, because all of the projects going through the accelerator and in our wider portfolio and Web3 generally need this solution. We believe it's still the best solution, the best approach. So get in touch on that one. And the next one is Zip. So Zip is an internal project that we developed within Outlier Labs, which is an area which we've had since our beginning. So the co-founder of Outlier is Aaron Van Amers. Aaron Van Amers is our CTO and co-founder. And the reason why I brought him in very early on was I'm non-technical. And of course, this is increasingly technical place. And so we have always learned how to invest in the space by applied technology, by applying technologies, learning its limitations. So within Labs, we kind of had this ability with a team of technical analysts. Theo Turner was the person working on this, to solve for a problem that was... I'm sure most people who are trying to build applications in this space will have felt the pain of, which is ultimately, if you want to build a SaaS equivalent business, digital service or product on a public blockchain, it is challenging to impossible, with both gas prices and the volatility of the underlying tokens, if you kind of consider them digital commodities. So because of the volatility in both of those things, it makes the ability for you to provide a kind of stable monthly or annual cost, SaaS-like cost to your customers impossible. And of course, there's lots of points of friction on multi-chain interchange if you're building a DApp on top of multiple protocols. So it's hard enough on one. It's doubly complex if you're using, say, data market in Ocean, you're trying to use some agents in Fetch, and you're trying to do something else on Ethereum. So effectively, our team, I think we ended up having 10 people contribute to this internally at Outlier, worked on a POC over several months to try to solve for this problem. And I think we cracked it. We rolled out that POC, open sourced it, and began to test it with a number of our enterprise partners, large BaaS consultancies, as well as enterprise, and then third-party development shops, as well as dApps, to kind of validate the proposition. And we got a good deal of traction and validation from that process, and several, I think 8 protocols committed to collateralize that network. And I think we have another slide on this, Scott. So we've already spent a not insignificant amount of money on the technology. Effectively, we would also be running this through the Accelerator Program. It works with all ERC20 tokens out the gate. As I said, has been validated by several Fortune 100 companies. And effectively allows for a cross-blockchain cloud credit, similar to Amazon's cloud credit, and for a futures market to happen beneath that via this on-chain liquidity pool. So effectively, again, we're looking for ideally 2 founders, technical and commercial. And similarly, we'll run this through the acceleration program, including writing its first check for some seed capital. So if you are interested in applying to either of those, or you know somebody that might, please do share it. I think the links are in the chat. Did we provide the email address yet? Maybe Charlotte could help. I can see she's doing that there, to express your interest for either of these. I think one might be for Zip primarily.
All right, folks, if people just reach out to me, that's all good. One thing to add just onto this, apart from like them both being crazy good opportunities, having been on the inside and seen what's going on with them, is that we're more than happy to accept like inbound from people who are interested in becoming part of a team to take this over. We're aware that there might not be a custom team ready out there to pick it up. So if you guys just think this could be a good fit and you're looking to find some founders to take this on, get in touch and we can start doing that piece.
One thing I would say specific to Zip, the commercials for Sovereign are still, the Sovereign or SSI token is still being worked through because it already has a number of different participants in a working group. But with Zip, that's something we have much greater control over. And in effect, we're offering the same kind of terms that you would expect were you bringing this to us. So in effect, we're just asking for slightly more equity. So I think we would retain 10% of the equity, but 90% of the equity would be going to the founders. So this isn't kind of one of those things where you have a spin out and it's like 50, 60% owned and controlled by us. We really just want this problem to be solved, and we're kind of gifting the code, the network, and this 100K commitment in collateral, as well as our initial investment to make it happen.
Yeah, awesome. So guys, thanks for being patient. I know we ran through a lot. That normally covers off quite a lot of the key points, and previously hadn't done any public talking about the RFPs. We have 2 questions in the bank all ready to start. Kicking off from Milan. Anna, do you want to take on which company stage is it relevant to apply to Basecamp?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So we accept super early stage companies. So we invested pre-seed and we know what that means. But generally companies that benefit the most from Basecamp, they either have a product or are very close to a product, just because this is where like really deep acceleration can happen. This being said, we are still looking at pre-revenue, pre-product people and companies. So feel free to shout out, and then we'll have a chat with you, and then we'll see if you're at the right stage or not. We still want people to have thought about the project, so we can't really accept like super early stage ideas. But if you thought about this, if you have the assumptions, if you have an idea how things are going to work, we are not going to turn you down because we know what pre-seed means. So, yeah, Scott, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to add to that, actually, Anna. I think in the context of DeFi, we're probably a little bit more looser on already having a product, just because obviously it's so easy to spin up a product. So we're a little bit more open to just great technical people, or DeFi natives that have spotted an opportunity to optimize for something or enable something. As long as we believe in their capability to roll out that technology responsibly, we're probably a little bit more liberal.
Yeah, that makes sense. The guys focused on like how early you can be. I think it's good just to mention at the other end of the spectrum, how sort of, I guess, late stage you can be. We've worked with quite a lot of projects who have fully fledged products in market being used. I think the guys Tap My Data were talking this morning. They've got like 10,000 monthly actives. We've worked with projects who have got up to 15k MRR, if that's the sort of metric that you're looking for, and also open source projects that have a lot. So it is worth reaching out, and we'll kind of chat through like what value we can provide and make sure that it comes in and can work for you.
Maybe just to kind of finish off on that point, Scott. I mean, ultimately, if you want to raise a massive seed round, it doesn't matter how close you are to that, but if that's your goal, that's what this program's for. So you can come into that pretty early, or you can come in with all the various ingredients and you just want to kind of get down to closing as big a round as possible, as an aggressive valuation as possible. We can help you with that.
Yeah, great shout. Question in from Guy: do you have conflict of interest within your portfolio, or do you have sometimes an issue to solve between investments? Just trying to make sure I answer this question correctly, Guy. So like, we're looking to do quite a lot of pre-seed investments across this space. Now, if you look at other accelerator programs, because we invest so early, we're going to be investing in similar things, but ultimately, Anna mentioned, we're investing in people. We try not to invest where things are directly competitive, and just make sure that, there's still plenty of market out there for them to be working towards. I think that generally our belief is that the market tends to be big enough for multiple players, and, just putting all your early stage bets behind one horse doesn't necessarily make sense from our point of view. I think on the flip side of that question, like, we do encourage collaboration between the portfolio projects. Got a team at the moment who are looking to integrate with Ocean. We're always quite fairly plugged into the guys at Fetch to see if there's anything that we can make happen there. So yes, sometimes conflict, I guess, of interest in terms of investment does arise, but it's a healthy one. We definitely don't use it to like pick favorites and use it in any negative way. Jamie, I know you've run the portfolio longer. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, so on the one hand, we've always looked at, when we were certainly investing at protocol and middleware layers, that this was actually a stack, an open stack, so not just exclusively the things that were in it, but we were making almost singular bets within kind of main protocol areas, enabling this new data economy. Now we're investing more higher up in the stack at the application layer. As Scott said, it's about who can take that and apply it to a market, and there could be multiple people tackling different segments of the same market or adjacent markets. It's not a problem we've had yet. On the one hand, we are a dedicated Web3 accelerator, so there are only so many use cases that are timely that we can invest in. At the same time, we aren't a 500 startups. So, our goal is not to have 500 or 1,000 plays. So we're quite considered in those investments. There was another point, actually, just circling back to this staging thing. So obviously we were talking about kind of classic rounds, seed or pre-seed, but actually increasingly projects are tokenizing again. So Anna did a great report recently which showed, what was the percentage? Anna, was it over half were now not doing a seed, they were doing a token sell. Are you on mute?
Oh, sorry about that. 75% are doing token sales in August, actually. Right. So we'll see what's happening next. But yeah.
So on the other hand, you could be a project that now wants to rapidly launch a token. So you might have a either untokenized instance, or you've already developed the token itself. You've got customers, you've got revenue, but you're looking to kind of roll out this tokenized instance. If you look at Dear Data, Dear Data went through cohort 1. They graduated just before Christmas, I think within 7 months, almost straight out the gate when the market picked up. They did a token bonding curve, and I don't know where their network value is now, but it's like 300, 400 million. I think they went out at about 100 million. So we can help with that. And we've done it several times before. Fetch.ai is a project that we help get out end to end in very different market conditions. So if you are a project that is considering a token, wants to validate if it's relevant or not, join the acceleration program, because we would invest in you even if you just have a good business and no token. But of course, tokens are hot. We do believe in the power of tokens to incentivize and bootstrap networks, marketplaces ultimately. So if you are a project that has been around for several years, as Scott said, got really good revenue, maybe have already closed a few million in funding, but now want to launch that token, we can help you rapidly launch that token in 3 to 4 months. So that should also be a consideration for applying.
Awesome. All right, that takes us through Milan, Guy. Oase, I think that answers your question. Like, we're open to non-token projects. We do invest in businesses who accrue value through equity. All right, and then that takes us to vision for DeFi. Double question. I think that maybe we shouldn't spend a whole bunch of time on vision for DeFi, but Jamie, I know you spent all of afternoon yesterday thinking about it. Do you want to give us like the 2-minute version?
I was at the pub. If anyone asks me what I'm doing and I'm at the pub, I'm thinking about DeFi. So obviously it's a rapidly evolving space. It's not caught us by surprise. So we've already been mulling over a lot of these considerations for quite a while now, years. But of course, like the rate of innovation that's happening in things like yield farming and moats that are possible in business models, where value is going to be captured, are still kind of open questions. However, increasingly, I'm coalescing, and we're about to publish a kind of sub-thesis to this next cohort 4, which we're actively recruiting for now, which is how we can mainstream DeFi. And I think it's going to come in 2 forms, depending upon the segment. So one is at an institutional level, how do we bring more institutional capital into the space? And the other one is the retail level. And we have a kind of a thesis for both of those. Again, I won't spend too much time going into it. But I think if you're looking at an institutional side, trustworthy professionalization, regulatory data oracles that can allow for regulated financial products, which is why we did DEAR, bringing greater programmability, computation to smart contracts, to allow for more complex kind of digital assets, programmable digital assets to exist, to represent financial instruments, to replicate some of the complexity that happens in existing capital markets. And then if you look at retail DeFi, I actually think DeFi plus NFTs are going to be how we mainstream that. And I think very quickly we're going to start seeing all variants of NFTs from loyalty points to collectibles, digital art, effectively being used to acquire and then retain users, customers into businesses, platforms, communities, marketplaces. And then increasingly those assets being used as collateral to kind of grow the amount of different types of collateral and liquidity coming in. By the way, the same is true for institutional end of DeFi, people that can bring in new forms of collateral, especially like physical forms of collateral, real estate, metals, other forms of kind of physical commodities, I think are going to be really interesting to kind of get sucked up into that liquidity system. So Thesis is on its way, but that's some thinking. So if you're working on DeFi from an institutional perspective, data, new forms of collateral, but if you're working in retail DeFi, which can be removing complexity, anything moving towards DeFi prime brokerage, UX, but then also NFTs, definitely get in touch.
Awesome. I think that takes us through most of the questions that have already been posted, and Charlotte's been answering some in the chat as we go along. A couple that haven't come up, which normally do. Geographically, we're happy for teams to be all over. We mentioned earlier on, we got teams all the way from Toronto in Canada through to Melbourne, Australia. I should mention that most of the program is based around sort of the European time zone, but we do make sure it works for everyone and that you still get everything that you need out of it.
You're an bird or a night owl, you can apply anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world, which is great. Jamie, Anna, are there any things that we've forgotten to mention which we think may be useful for potential founders in the program?
I would just underline the founders to the access to other founders. So you can see some of that, but we do have a podcast called The Founders of Web3. Pretty much everybody that goes on that usually becomes a mentor. They do a drop-in AMA. Sometimes it's public, sometimes it's private. So, if you want to be connected to people like that and to be able to tap up their networks, maybe even get some endorsement from them, I think we've kind of got a world-beating mentalist. But of course, it doesn't stop there. We've got everybody, including regulators, people working within very large enterprise in telecommunications, manufacturing, you name it, looking at blockchain.
Awesome. In which case, I think that brings us to a nice end.